The notion that one solitary individual, a lone, bumbling figure armed with nothing more than charisma, ego, or unfortunate timing can bring about the disintegration of international relations is a seductive fantasy for the intellectually lazy. It's a comforting narrative, really. Simpler, tidier. No need to trudge through the murky swamps of geopolitical history, corporate influence, intelligence agencies meddling like hyperactive toddlers with crayons, or the relentless machinery of late-stage capitalism grinding its gears in the background. Instead, we get a human scapegoat, an effigy we can burn, a villain we can jeer at, and most importantly, a person we can blame. Blame is useful, you see. It's cathartic. It gives us the illusion of control. When a leader like Trump, or any populist cloaked in the robes of truth, teller while clutching a script written by think tanks, tells you that on Indian destroyed US-India relations, he isn't making a statement of fact. He's handing you a mental placebo, because if the problems of the world boiled down to one man, one rogue agent, one culturally coded other, then perhaps we can fix it. Perhaps we can remove him, replace him, ban him, blame him, and everything will go back to normal. But what is normal in this context? Trade deals inked in the blood of the exploited, arms sales disguised as defense cooperation, diplomatic smiles covering up corporate looting. If anything, this myth of the individual villain is a distraction from how power actually operates. Real decisions are made not in front of microphones, but behind closed doors where lobbyists whisper louder than voters and where profit margins hold more sway than democratic ideals. The person being blamed, whether a dissident, a diplomat, or a businessman who didn't play ball, is merely a symbol, convenient, expendable. This myth serves a dual purpose. It feeds the media's hunger for personality-driven drama, and it sustains the illusion that institutions are otherwise sound. That the system would work perfectly if only that one bad actor hadn't slipped through the cracks. The problem is never the billion-dollar weapons contracts, the shady backroom deals, the military bases dotting the globe like a virus. It's one guy, one Indian. The myth makes monsters of men and angels of institutions. This is not a new trick. History is littered with the ghosts of scapegoats, whether it was one communist ruining a Senate hearing, one whistleblower endangering national security, or one immigrant breaking the system. The narrative remains eerily consistent. Is it a coincidence, or is it a pattern of weaponized individualism used to shield power from accountability? Because the true villain is not a person, it's a network, a web of interests so tightly woven that to name it would require implicating the very system we are told to trust. And in such a system, pointing to one person as the architect of failure is not only disingenuous, it's propaganda repackaged as punditry, politics disguised as entertainment, and deception sold under the label of truth. Politics, in the hands of certain figures, ceases to be governance and instead becomes a stage, a garish theatre of half-truths, spectacle and strategic absurdity. Donald Trump didn't invent this mode of politics, but he refined it into a dark art. What you're seeing when he makes statements like one Indian destroyed US-India relations isn't diplomacy or analysis, it's performance. Bombastic, polarizing, and expertly timed performance. A pantomime designed not to clarify but to confuse, not to inform but to divert. This is what makes it theatre, not politics. Because while real issues fester in the background, wealth inequality, arms deals, surveillance states, ecological collapse, the audience is drawn to the glowing neon of controversy. One tweet, one statement, one scapegoat. It's the magician's trick of the 21st century. Create chaos in one hand so no one sees what the other is signing, stealing, or selling. There's a genius in this kind of chaos, a dreadful, almost satanic brilliance. Trump doesn't just lie, he overwhelms. He saturates the airwaves with so many falsehoods, half-facts, and exaggerated accusations that even truth loses its footing. And in this flood of performative bluster, the people begin to mistake volume for substance. They confuse confidence with correctness. They start to believe that because someone says it with enough swagger, it must be so. Now, consider the phrase, one Indian destroyed US-India relations. It's not just a sentence, it's a headline, a meme, a weaponized narrative. It immediately activates the tribal instincts of nationalists, the fears of the uninformed, and the biases already seeded by years of media conditioning. Suddenly, the complexities of international diplomacy are boiled down to a soap opera subplot. It's not about trade imbalances, military alignments, or data sovereignty. It's about this one individual, this dangerous foreign figure, this convenient other, But Trump isn't just using distraction to protect himself, he's using it to serve a broader agenda. Distraction is currency in the neoliberal, media-saturated age. If people are busy arguing about a controversial statement, they're not reading the fine print on the latest corporate tax break or international arms agreement. They're not questioning why pharmaceutical companies have more influence over healthcare than elected officials. They're not scrutinizing why oil companies are being subsidized while the planet burns. What's more, Trump's distractions aren't just accidental, they're timed. They emerge precisely when the narrative is shifting away from him, when scrutiny is intensifying, or when his allies are in jeopardy. In that moment, he throws out a human headline, something inflammatory, something grotesque, and we, like moths to the flame, follow it. Even the outrage is part of the performance. When critics shout back, when media panels dissect every syllable, they're playing their roles. The spectacle expands. The cycle continues. And behind the curtain, the machinery of influence and power spins on, unaudited, undisturbed, unaccountable. The colonial era didn't end. It just changed its outfit. Gone are the pith helmets and steamships. In their place are boardrooms, embassies, and G20 summits. What we call post-colonial relations are often nothing more than colonial dynamics repackaged in the language of globalization and diplomacy. And nowhere is this more evident than in the tangled theatre of US-India relations, where the dance of power is choreographed not by sovereign ideals, but by the ghosts of empire and the greed of modern capital. Let's get one thing clear: colonization was never about culture or civilization. It was about control, and control doesn't need flags anymore. It needs contracts, patents, sanctions, and data. It needs think tanks that advise, corporations that lobby, and financial institutions that dictate austerity like it's a spiritual principle. So when a former Western leader or media personality claims that an Indian has somehow derailed the great relationship between America and India, they are not identifying a threat, they are defending a structure, a very old one. This structure, this hierarchy of global power, still views the global south, India included, not as an equal participant in the world order, but as a resource depot, a market, a factory floor. And so long as the local leaders play alongside the right deals, privatize the right sectors, say the right words at Davos, they are praised, decorated, welcome. But the moment they deviate, question the terms, or show even the hint of independent agency, they're rebranded dangerous, nationalist, unreliable, even villainous. That's where the puppetry comes in. Modern international relations are often stage managed spectacles where leaders from previously colonized nations must perform a very specific role: loyal, pliant, strategic, but never sovereign in the true sense. Puppets with passports. The performance must be convincing: shake hands, smile for the cameras, sign the MOU. But the strings are always there. Trade agreements that favour multinational corporations, data sharing protocols that quietly erode digital sovereignty, defence partnerships that lock developing nations into cycles of dependency, all the subtle machinery of neo-imperialism dressed in polite jargon. And when someone cuts their strings, or even looks like they might, that's when the narrative turns. The media storms in, statements are made. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about generational wealth inequality or climate debt or tech monopolies. It's about how an Indian caused a diplomatic crisis. This isn't just scapegoating, it's a ritual, a reassertion of control, a warning to others in the wings of power: stay in line. Or this could be you. Because colonialism wasn't just a historical period, it was a worldview, a system that ordered humanity into rulers and ruled. And that system, though it no longer marches under the Union Jack or sings "God Save the Queen," continues to replicate itself through modern economics, media narratives, and political alignments. The old empires may have collapsed, but their values were never truly dismantled. They simply outsourced their rule, digitized their dominion, and replaced missionaries with consultants. Nationalism is the theatre of belonging performed on a stage built by empires and lit by propaganda. It promises identity, unity, pride, but delivers obedience, division, and distraction. It invites people to bind themselves emotionally to artificial borders, fabricated flags, and national anthems that drone on like corporate jingles, while those in power exploit that attachment to consolidate control. You're not being protected by nationalism, you're being pacified by it. Consider what a nation actually is: a conceptual boundary often drawn by war, treaties, or colonial rulers with rulers, literal ones, dragged across stolen maps. And yet we are taught from the time we can walk to revere these invisible lines. We sing songs to them, fight wars over them, and hate people from the other side of them. People we've never met whose lives and loves are strikingly similar to our own. It's the great con of civilization convincing billions of people that their loyalty belongs not to truth, not to justice, not even to each other, but to a logo. Nationalism is marketed like a lifestyle product. You get your version of patriotism tailored to your country's brand, American exceptionalism, Indian civilizational pride, British resilience. It's all curated mythology, a few heroic stories, some culturally significant symbols, and an ors vers. Them binaries so powerful it can make otherwise compassionate people cheer for bombs dropping on strangers. It isn't unity, it's manipulation dressed as identity. And what better tool to divide the working class, the struggling, the disenfranchised, than nationalism, instead of looking upward toward the billionaires hoarding wealth, the oligarchs writing laws, the corporations buying elections. We look sideways, blaming immigrants, foreign powers, or minority groups. You're not poor because of economic exploitation. You're poor because they are taking your jobs. You're not oppressed by your government. You're being threatened by some external enemy who just so happens to justify increased military spending, surveillance, and censorship. Even the supposed glory of national independence often masks continued economic servitude. Countries once colonized are now sovereign in name, yet their policies are dictated by the World Bank, IMF, tech giants, and multinational interests. Their leaders, caught between the myth of national strength and the reality of global dependency, walk a tightrope. And when one of them tries to assert a genuine autonomous position, refusing to play the puppet in a Western-backed theatre, suddenly they're called extremist threats to democracy, unstable. Their nationalism is no longer acceptable. It's dangerous because nationalism, when it's useful to the powerful, is called patriotism. When it isn't, it's called populism or terrorism. That's how elastic the label is, how hollow it really is. It changes form depending on who's wielding it. It's not about love of country, it's about utility. And the utility lies in how easily it can be weaponized. Flags become shields to hide behind. National identity becomes a smokescreen for economic agendas. And the people, duped into believing they're defending their home, are really defending the interests of those who profit from perpetual division. The mainstream media, once presented as the noble fourth estate, the watchdogs of democracy, the seekers of truth, is now, more often than not, a performative echo chamber of state narratives and corporate interests. Journalism, in its purest sense, is meant to hold power to account. But what we increasingly witness is something altogether different, a vast, glittering apparatus of distraction and distortion, where the story is rarely the story, and the truth is a commodity to be edited, framed, or omitted depending on who's paying the bills. The architecture of modern media is not designed for illumination, it's built for influence. Ratings, clicks, engagement, these are the metrics of success, not integrity, nuance, or uncomfortable truths. And so the news is no longer information, it's entertainment. Narratives are packaged like streaming shows, complete with heroes, villains, cliffhangers, and carefully orchestrated outrage. The audience isn't being educated, they're being emotionally conditioned, primed to respond, to argue, to consume, to obey. And what is propaganda if not the selective dissemination of information to guide public perception? When a political leader blames or an Indian for the unraveling of a diplomatic relationship, the media doesn't interrogate the absurdity, they amplify it. They clip it, headline it, frame it in dramatic lower thirds. The story becomes not what systemic failures led to this tension, but who is this individual and how controversial are they? This sleight of hand transforms complex geopolitical dynamics into digestible moral fables. Simplify, sensationalize, sell. But the media isn't just chasing profit, it serves power. Look closer at the ownership structures. Who funds these networks? Who sits on their boards? Who advertises between segments? You'll often find the very corporations and political players that should be under scrutiny are instead underwriting the platform. So don't expect biting investigative journalism into big pharma on a channel whose commercial breaks are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. Don't expect a scathing expose on oil lobbying from a network owned by an energy conglomerate. What you get instead is what Noam Chomsky described not overt censorship, but structural filtering, stories that can't be told because the machinery forbids it. Even so, called or posing media voices, left, right, liberal, Conservative are often locked in a choreographed ideological tennis match that gives the illusion of choice while reinforcing the same basic assumptions. Capitalism is natural, war is unfortunate but necessary, dissent is dangerous unless safely contained within permissible limits. Real dissent, real journalism, threatens the shared interests of media, state and capital, and so it is marginalised, mocked or erased entirely. And in this circus of manufactured consent, the audience is not passive. They're not just viewers, they're participants. Their attention is harvested, their emotions are triggered, their divisions are deepened. The media doesn't just reflect society, it programs it one narrative loop at a time, with just enough truth to be credible and just enough omission to be useful. In a world where distraction is the currency of control, awakening is the most revolutionary act. Not the waking up at dawn to commute into the machine, but the deeper kind, the awakening of consciousness, of critical thought, of shared humanity. Because redemption, if it exists at all in a society built on deception, violence and spectacle, won't come from a single leader, a single election or a sudden change in foreign policy. It will come when the people collectively pull back the veil and see the systems as they truly are, not natural, not neutral, but manufactured and maintained by design. This awakening isn't some utopian fantasy, it's a necessity. We've been conditioned to view our lives through the lens of hyper-individualism, to believe that salvation is personal, your career, your money, your brand, your survival. But this mindset is a trick, a brilliant one. It ensures we stay isolated, suspicious, competitive, always struggling, rarely questioning. And in that fragmented state, we're easy to rule. Because no empire, no corporation, no corrupt regime can stand against people united by awareness. That's why the powerful fear collective awakening more than protest. Protest they can manage, tear gas, arrest PR statements. But consciousness, that's much harder to cage. Once someone sees the game, the real game, they can't unsee it. They begin to recognize the patterns, the way media narratives are synchronized across platforms, the way nationalism is weaponized to justify violence, the way economic policy is written not in parliament but in the offices of private lobbies, the way arrows and villains are selected not by truth but by convenience. And so the path to redemption is not through blame or blood but through awareness, and from awareness solidarity. Not the fake solidarity of hashtags and branded movements, but the raw, uncomfortable kind where people from different backgrounds sit with each other's pain, examine their complicity and move beyond tribal allegiances, where truth matters more than pride, where people ask not, what is good for my country, but what is just for all of us. This awakening doesn't require everyone to agree on everything. That's another illusion, that unity means uniformity. In fact, true collective power embraces complexity. It's not about finding the right ideology to subscribe to like a Netflix show. It's about unlearning the lies that have kept us obedient. It's about recognizing that we've been trained to see each other as threats when, in fact, we've been fighting the same enemy in different costumes. The exploitative systems that profit from our division, even the myth of the lone savior, the politician, the guru, the tech billionaire with a savior complex, is part of the conditioning. It's a seductive narrative that delays the real work, because as long as we're waiting for someone else to fix it, we don't have to take responsibility. But once we understand that power lies in networks, in shared belief systems, in the stories we tell and the ones we choose to stop telling, then the only real antidote to control is consciousness spread like wildfire across hearts and minds willing to feel something bigger than fear. In a world ruled by illusion, where leaders distract, media manipulates, and nationalism divides, the truth is buried beneath spectacle. Blaming a single individual for global unrest is a convenient myth, one that masks the deeper machinery of control powered by history, greed, and fear. But redemption doesn't lie in outrage or obedience, it lies in awakening. When we, the people, see through the performance, when we question the narratives, reject scapegoats and reclaim our shared humanity, we begin to dismantle the systems that divide us. The future isn't dictated by one man. It's shaped by all of us waking up together.